They used to laugh when I walked into a room, not loud. Laughter, not the kind that gets you in trouble, just that quiet, knowing smirk people give when they've already decided who you are. Too small, too slow, too soft-spoken. The kind of guy you interrupt mid-sentence because you assume he doesn't have anything worth finishing. And, yeah, for a long time I let them. I told myself it didn't matter that keeping my head down was the smart move, that survival meant blending in. But here's the thing nobody tells you until it's too late. When people get used to stepping over you, they don't notice when you finally decide to stand up. It started in a place nobody dreams about ending up. A maintenance garage on the edge of a dying industrial town, all rusted beams and flickering lights, the air thick with oil and old regret. I was the night supervisor, which sounds fancy until you realize it just meant I worked when no one else wanted to, fixing problems nobody noticed unless something went wrong. My boss, Rick Dalton, made sure everyone knew exactly where I stood. He liked to remind me I was lucky to be here, liked to joke about how I should smile more, talk less, be grateful. He'd correct me in meetings even when I was right, talk over me like I was background noise. And the others followed his lead because that's how it works. You learn who it's safe to disrespect by watching who never pushes back. I remember the night everything changed because it didn't feel dramatic at first. No thunder, no music swelling, just another late shift and another problem nobody wanted to deal with. A shipment went missing. Not small stuff, either high-value equipment that could shut the whole operation down if it didn't magically reappear. Rick stormed in, red-faced, already looking for someone to blame. He didn't even pretend to investigate. He just pointed at me. "Night shift again," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. Funny how problems always happen when you're in charge. People stared at the floor. Nobody said a word. And I felt that familiar heat crawl up my neck, that mix of anger and shame you get when you're accused of something you didn't do but know you won't be believed. That was the old me's moment to apologize, to promise I'd look into it, to swallow it like I always did. Instead, something snapped. Not in a loud way, more like a quiet click, like a lock turning. I looked at Rick and said, "You want to talk facts or you want to keep telling stories?" The room froze. You could hear the lights buzzing. Rick laughed because of course he did. "Watch your tone," he said. "You're not in a position to question me." And that's when I realized the truth. I never had been. Not because I was wrong, but because I'd never forced anyone to see me differently. I went home that night and didn't sleep. I kept replaying every insult, every time I'd been blamed, every joke at my expense. And somewhere between 3 in the morning and sunrise, I made a decision. If I was going to be accused anyway, I might as well be dangerous. Not violent, not reckless, just impossible to ignore. I started digging. Logs, access, records, camera feeds. Nobody bothered checking because they assumed no one like me would. Turns out the missing shipment didn't vanish on my watch. It left on Rick's. Signed out under a shell vendor he'd set up months earlier. Sloppy, honestly. He'd gotten comfortable. Too comfortable. The smart move would have been to hand it quietly to HR, let the system work. But I'd seen how the system worked. It worked for people like Rick. So I waited. I documented everything. Dates, times, serial numbers. I let him dig his hole deeper. And he did because bullies always do when they think they're untouchable. He kept riding me, kept pushing, kept making sure everyone knew I was the weak link. The funny thing is, once you stop being afraid, their power evaporates fast. You start seeing them clearly. Rick wasn't strong. He was loud. He wasn't confident. He was scared someone would do to him what he'd been doing to others. The confrontation came on a Monday morning. Full staff meeting. Coffee going cold, people half awake, expecting another boring rundown. Rick started like always, complaining about losses, about accountability, about how some people weren't pulling their weight. Then he looked right at me. "If we don't fix this," he said, "we'll have to start making changes." He let that hang there, a threat wrapped in corporate language. That's when I stood up. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might give me away, but my voice didn't shake. "Before we talk about changes," I said, "we should probably talk about where the equipment actually went." Rick's smile faltered. Just for a second. Enough. I laid it all out. Calm. Methodical. I showed the logs on the screen, the footage, the vendor records. You could feel the room shifting that moment when people realize the story they've been told doesn't add up. Rick tried to interrupt, tried to joke his way out of it, then tried to get angry. "This is out of line," he snapped. "You don't have the authority." And I looked at him and said, "Neither did you." Silence. Real silence this time. Not awkward, not polite, heavy. Security walked him out an hour later. HR followed up with apologies that felt rehearsed promises about culture and accountability. People avoided my eyes for days, not because they were mad, but because they were embarrassed. They'd gone along with it. They'd laughed. They'd stayed quiet. A few eventually came up to me, said things like, "I always knew something was off," or "I wish I'd said something sooner." I nodded, because what else do you do? Vindication feels good, but it's lonely. When you stop being the underdog, people don't know where to place you anymore. Here's the part nobody expects. Winning didn't make everything better overnight. It didn't suddenly turn me into the loudest voice in the room or erase years of being overlooked. What it did was change how I saw myself. I stopped shrinking. I stopped assuming I was wrong before anyone else spoke. And, funny enough, people followed suit. The same coworkers who used to talk over me started asking my opinion. Management started looping me in. Not because I'd magically become smarter, but because I'd finally forced the room to adjust. But there's a twist, and this is where people argue. A few weeks later, I found out Rick was fighting to get his job back. Claiming misunderstanding, claiming pressure, claiming everyone does it. And some people backed him. Said he was a good manager, that he drove results, that maybe I'd gone too far, airing things publicly. I won't lie, that messed with me. Made me wonder if I'd crossed a line. If standing up for myself meant becoming the villain in someone else's story. You know what I mean. That gray area where justice and revenge start looking uncomfortably similar. In the end, I didn't regret it, because silence would have been easier, and easy is how people like Rick survive. The world doesn't change because the right people stay quiet. It changes because someone finally gets tired of being the safest target in the room. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't throw a punch. I just refused to accept the role I'd been assigned, and that it turns out was enough to flip the whole script. So here's my question for you. Was I right to expose him the way I did, knowing it would blow everything up, or should I have trusted the system and kept my head down? Where do you draw the line between professionalism and self-respect? If you've ever been underestimated, blamed, or pushed aside, I want to hear how you handled it or how you wish you had. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Argue with me if you disagree. Share your own story. If this hit close to home and if you think more people need to hear this, pass it along. Sometimes the quietest people have the loudest breaking point.